This is an Ultimate Global Podcast. Hello, and welcome to our Daily Dose Podcast, covering all about day-to-day global affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.
So we are here for the first ever Daily Dose Podcast. And for the first Daily Dose Podcast, we have got some special guests today with us. The first one is George Mavros himself, who is the founder of, who's a co-founder along with me for this Ultimate Global Podcast. We also have with us Joshua Curris, who is an executive manager at the United Nations Association. Just to give a brief introduction about Ultimate Global Podcast Series, it's a podcast series where we want to discuss about international affairs, which are trending in the world, and through which we can create the discussions through which we can create some meaningful value to your day-to-day life. We came up with this idea a few months back when George and I were having a casual discussion. And through that casual discussion, we in fact came up with some key insights. And there we thought that probably we can make this insightful discussion a part of our podcast where everybody comes and listens to us, and more insights come into the picture, and that's how we can add value to the society as a whole. So it's not just a business idea, but it's an idea which adds value to the society. What do you have to say, George, in this regard?
Yeah, I think very specifically, it's not a business idea. It's about creating thought and creating people to do something. Now, if that happens to generate business, so be it. But my main interest whenever I'm talking about any topic is to get somebody to think. So I'd like to put out my case. I'd like to put out my argument. But then I always want to finish with, what do you think? So I'm all about us generating thoughts. And when we say it's global matters and it's things that are important, Saurabh and I think they're important. You may not. Okay, chill out on that one. But if you don't think it's important, but we did raise it, maybe you should give some thought as to why us and our guests also thought it was important enough to raise. Because we're not here to talk about nonsense.
Absolutely. So starting off and kicking off with our first Daily Dose podcast for today, as we know, for most of the people who are listening us from New South Wales, it's a good news that we have got 6.8 million jabs now up, with 66% of eligible population with the first dose and 36% population have got that double dose. So I think a big clap for those people who have already got vaccinated, and it's a huge shout out for those who have not got vaccinated till now. We have got somebody from the PhD background who is already doing PhD in medicine. I'm sure he has got some great tips for you all. What do you have to say in this regard, Joshua?
Thank you so much, and congratulations to you both on the launch of this brand new podcast. I know I'll be listening avidly as the weeks come. But in terms of the topic of COVID, goodness, as if we haven't spoken about it enough. However, we speak about it a lot for a reason. It is the most pressing concern of our society at the moment. I am very optimistic about these numbers coming through that you've just mentioned. We are doing an absolutely exceptional thing at the moment. New South Wales has amongst the highest vaccination rates in the world. Aussies are known to come together during times of trying times, and this is no exception. Our recent rate of 150,000, breaking that 150,000 doses a day rate is simply phenomenal. And I expect that, we will hit these targets of 70 and 80% in November and December. And hopefully that means a happy and warm Christmas together.
Absolutely. And we have already got that big announcement from the Premier of New South Wales that there is going to be a face-to-face return of school learning from October 25th. Mm-hmm. We're waiting for that big announcement on October 25th. And also, the Treasurer making this announcement that we have to, at the end of the day, we have to learn to live with COVID-19. It's not going to be over. But what we need to understand is get ourselves vaccinated, and get ready for the situation where more than 80% people are vaccinated and we still get the economies running. From the global point of view, there have been really great updates. Singapore has been doing really well with 80% of the people are completely vaccinated there. There have been some updates from Africa where we see that the director of African Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says that there has been an inequality in this global vaccination. Do you have to say anything in this regard, Joshua, that there has been some sort of vaccine inequality across the countries going on?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, obviously, the numbers don't lie; they speak for themselves. We're seeing the developed nations, receive the overwhelming number of doses, and it's a situation where, and if drastic action is not taken, we will see the effects of COVID lasting for years longer in already struggling economies in developing nations for years to come. That's why the World Health Organization, in response, well before we saw these numbers coming through, it developed the COVAX initiative, where all nations can contribute to a fund reserved specifically to provide funding for vaccines in developing nations. I think that's the one important point globally speaking. I think a second most important point that should be raised regarding vaccines and our race against the clock, so to speak, is when it comes to vaccine hesitancy. People need to be aware that when we all have that cousin, that colleague, that neighbor who is hesitant to take the vaccine, I think firstly it's very important for people to know that the way to engage with these individuals is to demonstrate compassion, empathy, and present with a listening ear, acknowledge what their concerns are, and then gently introduce what we are finding from academic rigor and whatnot. What the science has to say, and nothing more. No opinions, just science. And I think that's what research, at least my research, is demonstrating is the most effective way to really make sure that we all get vaccinated.
The COVID and vaccines in general have raised globally, but for us, very specifically in New South Wales, the question of your rights and responsibilities, your privileges and responsibilities. I've got close relatives and I've got very good friends that have no intention at this stage of being vaccinated, and they've got some very justifiable reasons in their mind. And there's many. I saw an article, a video on the news 2 days ago, where supposedly Germany has stopped vaccination at the moment due to concerns. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but given that it could be, it certainly looked like a true broadcast to me. If one expert is telling us this and one expert is telling us that, all of us that are promoting vaccination, and I've had my double dose, I'm, according to some, I'm Wi-Fi 5 friendly now. I can do 5G, and I'm also magnetic.
And microchips. Don't forget microchips.
And yes, and glow in the dark. But if we have the right, and we've got the belief that we're entitled to do this because we think it's right for our family, it's a bit hard for us to say to the other person, you don't have that same right, because at the moment there is a chunk of vaccination that is about faith. I have the faith that this vaccination is right. I have the faith that we've got the right story on it. But somebody else may have the faith that it's not correct. And I can think of a drug, Joshua, you probably would know of, called thalidomide. That when it first came out, it was a glorious drug. And then all of a sudden, 5 and 10 years down the track, things went wrong. Now, those of us that have taken this vaccine and know those stories, we still have the faith that what we're doing is right. So don't be so hard to jump down the throat of somebody that's got the faith of an alternative view. What the answer is? Well, privilege and responsibility, I guess. You want the privilege of your choice, you have to take the responsibility of it.
To those comments, I'd actually suggest that faith plays a smaller role than we would expect, just on the premise that people think that this vaccine was developed in a year. That's not actually, that is the narrative that unfortunately
I got told 6 months. 6 months,
yeah,
it was in 6 months.
Yeah, the reality of the situation is that the COVID vaccine was the sheer majority of the coding that was required to build the vaccine was already developed. We simply needed to customize it to the particular SARS-2 strain that this vaccine that the vaccine required, that the disease carries. We have never in the history of vaccines, in its approximate 150-year lifespan, never seen a side effect emerge from a long-term side effect emerge that we don't already know about in the first year of development. So and to address the concern of the fear that this was simply developed too quickly, the answer to that is that through all of the phases, not one single phase in the development of this vaccine was skipped or shortcutted. It was done overlapped, and the reason that was able to occur was the sheer amount of funding that occurred, the sheer volume of scientists who were dedicated to the work, and more importantly, the participants who are willing to put themselves forward to to participate in those early round of studies. So there's that component. And the final thing I just want to say is, in relation to the capacity for the vaccine to be effective and whatnot, and the concerns of what's in it and those other, I suppose, issues that people have raised. If you are raising that now, I wonder when you raised the questions to your doctors about every other medication you've ever taken, every food you've ever taken from fast food restaurants. It's just, I think it's important to acknowledge that there may be a double standard here, and it's due to the hyperfixation, the super hot spotlight that lies on these vaccines.
Well, one of the interesting things is that I was listening to somebody the other day that was saying that they believe in God. I happen to also believe in God. I might not go to church every Sunday. Doesn't mean I don't have a relationship with my God. And because they believed in God and God helped us and created the immune system, we don't need a vaccination. I respectfully tried to point out to that person, we had an immune system before we got a vaccination for measles. We had the godly immune system before we had the cure for polio and tetanus and a whole heap of things. But that doesn't seem to count now. Now, for the naysayers, they're locked in. And anybody that's watching this, this is a short burst. But what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to look up two things. One's called misinformation, and the other one is disinformation. And start to read through where those two things occur. And what I like to do, Josh, is when I hear somebody tell me something, I want to hear what they're saying, but I want to listen to where it's coming from. And I saw a wonderful post today that said, there's got dermatologists, vaccine people, specialists, all these professors telling us that this is okay. Yet my friend that failed science in high school, he's saying it's not. I just don't know who to listen to at the moment. And I thought it was very apt. So look up disinformation and misinformation, because misinformation can be delivered by your best friend with the best of intentions, but it's still wrong. Anyway, Saran, over to you.
I think that's a good advice by both of you, but we also have to look at what's the best possible solution at the moment for us.
Yeah.
So the best possible solution to come out of the lockdown is that we get vaccinated and we get the economies running, because this is a big question going on in the media, which we'll keep it for the next day, that till what time we should continue with these lockdowns, because there is no definite time for that, right? We cannot keep on extending the lockdowns forever. Otherwise, what it does is it just derails your economy from where you are going now. So another key issue which is going on in the media is what happened in Afghanistan on Thursday and the following incidents after Thursday. So there was an attack on the Kabul airport, close to the Kabul airport, on one of the gates by a group called ISIS-K, Islamic State Khorasan province, which was founded in the 2015, and US has already been executing a lot of leaders of that group for more than 3-4 years now. But the question here is that, first of all, why did that attack happen is quite sad to know, because the US were evacuating a lot of people from Afghanistan, and they have been continuing to do that. There has been a retaliatory attack on Saturday as well by US on one of the vehicles that happened on Sunday, which has been blamed that by mistake it was killing the children inside the vehicle. But it was not the case, because the main intention of attacking that vehicle was that vehicle was actually carrying some kind of instruments to attack on the Kabul airport for a second or third terrorist attack. So what have you been hearing about this, Josh?
Yes, and
Go, Josh. No,
please. This is yours. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
It's our podcast, and I'm telling you to go.
I was just going to say that it's truly an unfortunate circumstance where we're finding people who are attempting to flee being attacked. It really does hurt, doesn't it, to see what's unfolding over there. There are so many complicated, multifaceted components to the discussion. I mean, do you blame the West? Do you blame the Afghan soldiers? Do you blame the There is a question of blame, scattered throughout the public media, and I don't think that's the correct way to go about it. My first thought is, forget the blame. It's how do we, at the moment, salvage and preserve the human life that we have. I think that the narrative is being told in that incorrect avenue. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the problem of any military action is that it's very rare that it's anywhere other than where civilians are. There's always civilians during any sort of military action. The other thing is, come back to my earlier topic of information, misinformation and disinformation. Many a time we've been told one thing occurred in an attack or a counterattack, only to find out, well, the story wasn't quite that right. And that happens on both sides. One of the things, Sarab and I were talking about this the other day, one of the things that gets me about this whole situation, I don't criticise the Americans for pulling out on the day that they said they were going to pull out last year. Let's not forget that. This date has been known since last year or so, when President No Name in my mind made the agreement. The thing that absolutely beggars belief for me is, out of the Americans, the English, the Australians, every other nation that's been part of this, nobody thought it might go a bit pear-shaped coming up to the 31st. I cannot believe that not one single government, and more importantly, probably something like 15 or 20 military organisations, forgot to look at Plan B. Just amazes me. And our own government, I'm neither Liberal nor Labor. Traditionally I'm a Liberal voter, but I can be upset with anybody, no matter which political party they're from, if they've got to be upset with. And for our government to be saying, look what we've done in the last week, guys, you should have been thinking about that a while ago. So the attack is an unfortunate thing. Sadly, it doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter what war you want to talk about. There will always be the innocents involved in it.
I think this has never been a discussion, George, that whether US were supposed to come out of the Afghanistan or not in this year. It's just been the deal that they had with Taliban was dealt in a very rushed manner, and there was no sort of plan to leave Afghanistan, and they just left instantaneously without even communicating properly to the people of Afghanistan, to whom they have served for 20 years. And I think that was one of the main questions that they have to answer, though they have been answering that we already had communicated to you since April. But that's not the correct answer as per me, because that is something which they should have communicated with the audience in a proper way by dealing with the Taliban at the first and creating a peace deal, so that there is no kind of violence or deaths happening after they leave Afghanistan, because it was so haphazard, because it was done in a so unorganized manner. That's why we are seeing all kinds of incidents which are happening.
Yes, and unfortunately, us and probably everybody else watching this really don't have the right or the authority to fully talk about it, because we don't know what was agreed. We don't know what was talked about. We don't know what Trump agreed to. We don't know what was passed or not passed over to Biden. We don't know what the Afghan government was supposed to do. I mean, there is a part of me that says to a degree, you should have had the right to think that they were going to put up a little bit more resistance than what they did. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody's government, but I'll guarantee you the ex-president, prime minister, whatever he was, I'll bet he's not in some country for the safety of his people and a pauper. I'll bet he's got a few bob behind him. He was able to organise that pretty well. But you see this all the time. You see this all the time. The people end up being the pawns.
Well, I think we can keep that discussion in a very detailed fashion in our special weekly podcast on one of the days.
Yeah.
But for now, I think we have to say goodbye for today. I hope you all liked today's episode, barring the few technical errors that we faced at the beginning. But as and how we move forward, we hope to gain more support, more followers, and hope to see you come to our episodes and discuss your ideas, post in your comments. If you have got any questions, if you have got any suggestions on the topics that we should discuss, we would love to take your suggestions. And we would love to see more people joining in our podcast sessions like Joshua has joined today. Love to have more brand ambassadors for our podcast who can spread the word. And do you have anything else to say, George, in this regard?
Just a quick reminder to everybody, we've got an incredible number of incredible people participating in a thing called the Paralympics. One of the easiest ways that you can support those people is to be watching television. Another way of doing it just a little bit better, in Australia, you can buy a virtual seat. My wife and I have bought a virtual seat. It's $25. It goes towards the Paralympic movement, and it's a global thing.
Huge.
I haven't checked to see, Sarab, how we're going against India, but I'll do that before I answer.
Here. Well said.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. That's it for today's daily podcast episode. I'll see you tomorrow with Joshua again coming at a different time. Till then, have a good day.